Hey guys, time once again for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialists. It is Thursday, so no Rafa today, but Jacob was here and put in a pretty full day. And so let's go ahead and talk about what he did first, especially since it made it onto the thumbnail of today's video. So as I mentioned before, he has been learning how to build motors. And so we've been having him go through and blueprint this motor. So for those of you who may have heard that term and don't really know what that means, basically what it means is instead of just pretty much bolting everything together and assuming that the parts all fit correctly, and by parts here I'm primarily talking about the bearings for the main bearings of the crank and the bearings for the rods. So unfortunately, a lot of the bearings that are available now for V-dub motors, the quality of them can be pretty hit and miss. And so if you just assume that you buy a bearing that fits and you assemble a motor, you may end up with a seized motor because a lot of times the tolerances are just way off, either way too loose and you have no oil pressure, or way too tight and the bearings get hot and overheat and all kinds of bad stuff happens. So when you blueprint a motor, you actually go in and you measure the journals very accurately. You measure the inside bore of the bearings when they're in the case and the case is torqued down properly. And then you compare those two numbers for each journal and bearing combination, and you check and see what's called the oil clearance, which is basically the difference between those two diameters. And yeah, there's a range in which it should be that's acceptable. And so that's what we're checking. And so it looks like these bearings that we have for both the crank and the rods is okay. They're pretty much within spec. They're at least within the wear limits. It's pretty impossible to get bearings these days that are like dead nuts on. So I think these are good, especially for a relatively low horsepower motor like a 36 horse. They're actually really good, I think. So yeah, it was a good learning process for him, but he went through and did it. So right now the bottom end of this motor is just mocked up. So the crank is in there with its bearings, and obviously you can see the connecting rods hanging off it. So I'm kind of having him go through and mock things up in stages, and at this stage make sure that that it spins freely and so on, with basically just the crank in there. So, and that the rods are moving freely on their journals. And then we'll go ahead, probably now that we're happy with those bearings, and we'll assemble the crank. And then we'll probably do another mock-up assembly with just the crank and the cam and make sure that they're playing together nicely. And then after that, we'll probably go ahead and do final assembly of the bottom end. So yeah, Jacob's learning a lot. He's a fast learner. He's a very enthusiastic learner. So been kind of fun to teach him and kind of explain to him the reasons we're doing what we're doing, instead of just oh, hey, here's a bunch of tools and take a bunch of measurements. And so yeah, he's picking it up really quick. So that's what he worked on today, or actually he's been working on this recently, but today we kind of did a lot of test fitting and stuff like that. So yeah, moving right along. So as far as I'm concerned, what I did was still working on the 69 cowlick bug. Kind of took a break from wiring today. I did get a bunch more switches and stuff like that, and where I could have done some more wiring, but I'm really wanting to get the front of this car back on the ground. It's kind of bugging me that it's just sitting on a dolly, and especially now that the wheels are in, I need to get some tires. I need to get this car on the ground. I want to see what this bad boy looks like on those Fuchs. So that kind of gave me some motivation to take a break from wiring and work on the suspension. So today, basically what I did was I got the front beam installed, so you can see it there obviously. Steering box is installed. It's a little bit loose right now, the steering box, because we want to make sure it's lined up properly with the steering shaft. I think I've got it lined up pretty well right now, but we'll fine tune that a little bit before we lock down its position. Trailing arms went on, spindles went on, and so next up is the brake rotors, which I have painted right now. So in the morning I will go ahead and press the bearing races into those, and then the rotors can go on, and then the calipers and some brake lines, and what else? So This is a narrow, or excuse me, this is a stock width beam, so I'm going to reuse his tie rods, which are super ugly, but there's no point in replacing the actual tie rods, but what I will be replacing is, of course, the ends. I had a spare set from another project that, you know, a customer didn't pay for, so it's not like somebody else is buying parts for this guy's car. This is a spare set I ended up with for free, essentially. So they are going to be going on this car, save this guy a few bucks. So yeah, I'm going to clean up the actual tie rods themselves, paint them, put the new ends on, and then boom, he's got new tie rod assemblies essentially. So those will go on, and then yeah, front suspension, steering, and brakes will pretty much be done at that point. Like I said, I got to get off my butt and order some tires for the front and back of this thing, get those mounted up on the Fuchs, and yeah, hopefully, realistically, probably not by the end of this week, which is just tomorrow. But probably earlier, mid next week, we'll have this thing actually sitting on its wheels and tires. So very excited about that. This thing's gonna look so bitchin', it's not even funny. And continue on wiring. Although I'm pretty anxious to dig into this thing. I'm gonna call its owner tomorrow. I've got some estimates for him on some different options for the pan, which has got to be one of the first things that we do once we get the car disassembled. A couple different options. I'm going to give the owner a call tomorrow and talk about options for his pan, some different things we can do. And yeah, so I may actually go ahead and I'll probably pressure wash this thing first, and then start disassembling it. We'll see, but I may do that tomorrow. I don't know. It seems like kind of a fun Friday project to tear into this thing. Maybe take a break from old Red over here. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it for today, guys. So thanks for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.